Yo, what's going on? So a lot of people find it hard to trace their roots back to Africa in terms of what country they're from. And this is hard because the whole carving up of Africa into countries is relatively new on the time scale. If we could have our way, right, the best way to do it would almost to be to somehow find out the tribe that you're from so you can find out the region that you were in. Because when they carved up Africa, the lines that they drew to separate oftentimes cut through tribes, cut through different groups speaking the same languages. So all of a sudden, right, you have people calling themselves, native to one country versus another, but in reality, if you go back a couple of hundred years, they come from the same tribe. Even just look at the physical differences. It's not that many. I mean, they're subtle. Like, you have to have an eye for it. Like, being Nigerian, you can spot out somebody who may be Ghanaian, but even then, it's still touchy because you could be wrong. Right, so there isn't any physical type differences. You only really see it when you get more towards East Africa, but even with that, there's a lot of mixing of the blood anyway. Right, you even look at Ethiopians and Eritreans. Right, the whole separation of the two is relatively new. But when you talk to a couple of Eritreans and Ethiopians and you kind of confuse the two, they may get mad at you. But you guys are pretty much the same people. That division is relatively new. Right, so that's where it gets tricky. That's where it gets hard. It's almost best to figure out what region you're from and look into what different tribal groups, inhabited that area, and almost figure out what they called it. Because the whole names, Nigeria, and all these things, they're relatively new. Right, you're not gonna go back thousands of years and Africa's not going to be carved up the way it is now. So it definitely gets tricky, because even for me, this is where I need a scholar to enlighten me in terms of how it was actually separated according to us, how people differentiated where they're from. I know a lot of it was by language and other indicators. Right, so there's definitely a separation. I don't want people to think it's just one large group. There was definitely differences, but we can't trace it back using the whole idea of finding what country you're from. That's new. It's not like America. You can't treat it like it's America. I've read a couple of papers where even just look how it was broken up with the straight lines and all that stuff. It's almost as if they're able to go to space and get a nice little map and, cut it where they wanted to, smooth, sharp lines. A lot of the separations, right? Like, why would you separate your country that way, right? In terms of you doing it yourself. So the image that we get of Africa as today, it has more to do with how Europeans carved it. That's the point I'm trying to get at. So you may find it difficult to trace your roots. I mean, you can be, you may say, find out that, I don't know, you may be, Nigerian. But in reality, you may be from a different tribe. Right? You may right now find yourself in a spot that they call Nigeria. But 100 years back, it was something else. I don't know what it was called, and this is where those gaps definitely have to get filled in, right? And this is why you still see a lot of tribal, territorial stuff going on, especially with Nigerians in terms of the Yorubas and the Igbos, right? It's not this one idea of we have pride for our country. It's more so we have pride for our tribe or our native group. So, to do this search, you really have to get your hands dirty. I don't know how else to put it. There's no easy way to do it. You really have to dig deep and really do some research and really figure out how we defined who we were prior to, European involvement. Because even before, colonization started, there was already the beginning of, calling certain regions this, calling certain regions that, and that's not what we defined it as. Right? So we have to figure out how we defined ourselves and how we separated ourselves. So I don't know, I went too long on this one. So like I said, let me know how you feel. If anybody has any resources, please, holler at me, give it to me, so we can really crack this open and really start to explore just how to go about searching for your roots in Africa. Right? So y'all take it easy. God bless.